Hi guys, it's Sarah from Miko Blue Tiny Living. So I got asked the other day, there was a comment made about tiny houses being a fad. Right, offhand, a backhand comment, tiny houses, they're just a fad, they won't be around in the next few years. So I just wanted to stop in and sort of address this because this was a little bit of a button pusher for me. And I want to say tiny homes are nothing new, okay? Early pioneers have lived in small wooden cabins. You go back and watch Little House on the Prairie if you haven't. That's what, 1800s, 1900s, something like that. Tiny wooden cabin, right? Canal boats have been around in Europe for decades. I actually did some research. I went back and I found images of the first recorded house on wheels all the way back in 1920s. It was like this big log cabin thing on wheels back in 1920s. First tiny house on wheels. But the modern tiny house as we know it was popularized by Jay Schaefer of Tumbleweed Tiny House Company back in 2002. So this modernization of what we know tiny houses on wheels as now, it's coming up on nearly 2 decades old. So it's nothing new, and it's still a cultural thing. There's still plenty of people living in small houses, both for, maybe resource reasons, all over the world. We've got different forms of tents or mental blank on the word I'm looking for right now, but like your round yurts, you've got igloos, there's log cabins, there's all sorts of different formats all across the globe that are cultural. That's how they lived. They didn't need big houses. We were told we need big houses. It was part of the industrialization that we needed big houses. So tiny living isn't anything new. It's a lifestyle choice that people have adopted in a variety of formats from all sorts of different cultures for a long time. The question is why? So when people are saying tiny houses is just a fad, they won't exist, I want to sort of address a little bit about why tiny houses do exist now, like this modernization of tiny houses as we know it, why it exists. And maybe understanding this will help us identify the motives that will lead to permanency. So for some people, it's about freedom, be it financial or time or emotional, being able to live with the ability to pick your house up and follow opportunity, be it a job or family. Maybe for you, freedom is about reducing expenses or simplifying the time you need to clean your home. Maybe it's about removing all the extra stuff that you just don't need in life and giving yourself that sense of freedom and liberty. So for some, it's about this feeling of freedom and liberty. For others, it's an environmental choice. Smaller homes use significantly less resources to build them in the first place. They're going to use less power to heat and cool them. And, there's less resources that go into maintaining. It's a smaller footprint. It just is. It's more energy efficient. So that factor too, it's also easier to take it off grid as well. The amount of solar panels that you need to take a tiny house off grid is a lot less than you need to take a big house off grid, right? Being able to take it off grid can be a deciding factor for people who want an independent lifestyle. They go, what, if we want to be off grid, we need a small footprint. It's the way it is. For some people, they're going tiny for the ability to travel. They want to be able to sell everything off, let all the clutter go, let all the stuff go, and just go travel. Maybe in a bus or a caravan or a van or a tent or camper trailer or whatever, but go see the country for a year. How cool would that be? So for a lot of people, that's their motivation for going tiny. Perhaps it's a door out of renting, and this is coming up. This is perhaps the key for a lot of people. Owning your home is pretty awesome, right? But it's really hard for people to get into the ownership market at the moment. There's this cap, and if people are struggling to meet that cap, there's so much money that is needed to get into that. So for some people, going tiny is just a door out of renting, and plus building your own home is pretty cool. So getting out of renting, building your own home, and owning it outright. It's like the trifecta of, coolness when it comes to a house. So for some people, that's it. And maybe tiny houses is the stepping stone. So there's more and more people who are going tiny for a few years, selling it, and they've been able to save up enough money that that's their deposit on their first home on foundations. Or maybe they'll keep the tiny house as a bed and breakfast, and that pays off the mortgage while they have the freedom to, do whatever they want. For some people, it's an intentional choice to downsize. So it's nothing more than I don't want to be in a big house and I just want small space. The average home is only used, this was an American study I saw, but they took thermal cameras and put them in the roof of houses, and they worked out that only about 40% of the average home was being used. So looking at the thermal mapping around the house, only about 40%. So that the rest of it, that space that's not being used, is still space that has to be maintained. It still has to be cleaned or dusted. It continues to drain energy in the heating and the cooling of the overall house. Some people just want to remove that unused space from their house. So there's a lot of reasons why someone might choose to live tiny. Perhaps it's one of the above or a combination of the few. For us, it was largely about, it was a combination of factors. So wanting the freedom, a stepping stone to be able to buy something bigger. And, we're 18 months in and I don't regret it at all. So there are some days when it is challenging, when the kids are a little bit wild. When we moved in, it was 6 weeks before we had running water. As a young family, no running water for 6 weeks. That was pretty challenging. So there have been challenging. But we know that the vision for our future aligns with our journey. It's worth it. It was worth taking the risk. It was worth spending the money. It was worth building our home and jumping in. It was worth it. We had a dream. We had a goal. We made a plan. And we built a new reality. So what I see as tiny houses, I see them as a viable solution to the housing accessibility and affordability. I see it as a viable solution to sustainability and land availability. The raw resources are only going to go so far. At some point, we're going to run out of resources. So I see tiny house communities with communal tool sheds and gardens and community centres as an awesome sustainable living options. I've also seen tiny houses be taken on as caretakers of land. They jump in and help look after land. And I've also seen families take $30,000 to $40,000, which honestly isn't even a deposit on a large chunk of housing in Australia. I've seen them take that chunk of money and turn it into a home they own outright, and that's exactly what we did. We had this chunk of money, which was hardly a deposit, it wasn't even going to get us very far, but that paid for our home in cash. So that's pretty cool. So what I see is an opportunity, and I see solutions. I don't see this as a fad. I see it as an opportunity which isn't going to disappear, but I really want to see it become, I want to see permanency. I want to see an option that hangs around for people and has stability for them in the future. That's what I want to see. It's not a fad. It's a solution. And it was not going to be for everyone, but I really think that tiny houses tick so many boxes and so many problems for so many people that while they're not going to be for everyone, they might just be the solution that really turns someone's life around. And if that's something that we can work on and we can keep this movement growing in a healthy way, making sure that people are being looked after and given the right answers and not being left in the dark by themselves, I see this movement solving problems, and I'm so proud to be part of that. If you'd like to connect with me, send me a message. I'd love to chat with you. And, maybe this is your tiny living dream too. We'll talk soon. Bye.